Priya didn't notice her own sister had stopped being invited to family dinners until she counted the photos on her mother-in-law's mantle and realized none of them were from her side of the family at all. 3 years of marriage, not one photo of her parents, not one of her sister. She'd simply never noticed the absence until the day she went looking for it. Vivian Ashworth had welcomed Priya into the family with the kind of warmth that felt, at first, like exactly what Priya had been missing. Her own mother had passed when she was 22, and Vivian arrived in her life 2 years later, generous, attentive, endlessly present in a way that filled a specific, aching gap Priya hadn't fully admitted she still carried. "You're the daughter I always wanted," Vivian told her, the week she and Marcus got engaged, squeezing her hand across a restaurant table with tears genuinely standing in her eyes. It felt, at the time, like the kindest thing anyone had said to her in years. The changes came slowly enough that Priya never connected them into a pattern, not at first. A family dinner rescheduled, apologetically, to a date Priya's sister Anjali had already said she couldn't make. A holiday gathering moved locations at the last minute, the new address somehow never quite reaching Priya's father in time. A birthday celebration for Marcus that Vivian had already planned before Priya could suggest inviting her own extended family, framed always as thoughtfulness, never as exclusion. "I just wanted it to be simple this year," Vivian would say, whenever Priya gently raised it. "Big gatherings stress me out more as I get older, you understand." Priya did understand mostly, because Vivian made understanding easy, warm, reasonable, endlessly plausible, never once saying anything Priya could point to directly as unkind. What Priya didn't fully register, for 3 years, was how consistently every plausible reason led to the same outcome. Her own family present less, Vivian's family present more, until the gatherings that used to include both sides had quietly, gradually, become entirely Vivian's world, with Priya simply living inside it. It was Anjali who noticed first, from the outside, the way it's often easier to see a pattern in someone else's life than your own. "When's the last time Mom and Dad were actually invited to something with Marcus's family?" Anjali asked, over coffee, genuinely curious rather than accusatory. "Not obligated to show up to, actually invited like they matter." Priya opened her mouth to answer and found she genuinely couldn't remember. She went home that week and counted, properly for the first time, 3 years of holidays, birthdays, casual Sunday dinners, cross-referenced against who'd actually been present each time. Her own family, 4 occasions in 3 years, always brief, always somehow logistically difficult, always ending earlier than everyone else's visits seemed to. Vivian's family, nearly every single gathering, expanding steadily, warmly, until Priya's own wedding album. She checked this too, disturbed by what she already suspected she'd find, contained twice as many of Vivian's extended cousins as it did Priya's actual blood relatives, several of whom Vivian had personally, apparently, added to the guest list without ever mentioning it to Priya at the time. Priya didn't confront Vivian directly. She'd learned, over 3 years, that direct confrontation with Vivian produced only warmth, confusion, gentle hurt, a masterclass in redirecting any accusation back into Priya somehow being the unreasonable one for noticing. Instead, she decided to test something. She planned a dinner herself, her birthday, 6 weeks out, and told only Marcus and Vivian the date, mentioning casually that she was inviting her father and Anjali, and that she was really looking forward to everyone finally being in the same room together after so long. Vivian's response arrived within 2 days, warm, effusive, immediately suggesting a slightly different date that would work so much better for everyone, a date Priya happened to already know. From a separate conversation with Anjali that her sister had a work commitment, Priya said nothing. She simply agreed to the new date and waited to see what Vivian would do next. 2 weeks before the dinner, Vivian mentioned, almost in passing, that she'd already booked the same weekend for a small family thing with Marcus's cousins, something that had apparently been planned for months, something Priya had never once heard mentioned before that exact moment. "We could combine them," Vivian suggested brightly, "everyone together, so much more fun that way." Priya understood, watching her mother-in-law's face carefully for the first time in 3 years, instead of simply accepting the warmth at face value, exactly what combining them would actually mean. Her own small dinner quietly absorbed and diluted into Vivian's much larger gathering. Her father and sister once again present, but peripheral, outnumbered, gently overwhelmed the way they always somehow ended up being. Actually, Priya said, her voice calm in a way that surprised even her, let's keep it separate. My birthday, my family. You're welcome to come to that one too, but I'd like it to actually be that my family in the room, without anything else happening around it. Vivian's smile didn't fully fall to Dot, but something behind it did, a flicker Priya had never let herself see clearly before, because she'd never directly tested it before. Of course, Vivian said smoothly. Whatever you'd like, sweetheart. The dinner happened exactly as planned, small, warm, unremarkable in every way except that, for the first time in 3 years, Priya's own family filled the room without competition, without a quiet cousin count working against them, without a rescheduled conflict engineered to thin them out. Vivian attended. She was pleasant the entire evening, complimentary, warm in every visible way. But Priya watched her, really watched her, and noticed something she'd never let herself notice before, how carefully Vivian tracked the conversation, how subtly she redirected attention back toward herself whenever Priya's father or sister held the room too long, how her warmth seemed to function less like affection and more like a kind of quiet, constant management. Priya didn't stage a confrontation that night, and she never did afterward either. She didn't need Vivian to confess to anything, didn't need a dramatic reckoning or a public reveal. She'd learned, watching her mother-in-law operate for 3 careful years, that Vivian's entire method depended on nobody ever naming what she was doing out loud. The moment it had a name, it stopped working. So Priya simply started naming it, quietly, only to herself and to Marcus, who, once shown the 3 years of dates and photos laid out plainly, went pale in a way that told Priya he'd never once consciously connected the pattern either. They didn't cut Vivian off. They didn't need to make it dramatic. They simply, deliberately started planning things themselves, their own gatherings, their own guest lists, their own dates set first and shared as information rather than invitations open for negotiation. When Vivian offered a better date, they thanked her and kept the original one. When Vivian mentioned a conflicting family event, they simply let both happen separately, without folding one into the other. Vivian never adjusted to it easily. She grew quieter at gatherings that weren't entirely her own, made occasional wounded comments about feeling less involved lately, tested the boundary more than once with a rescheduled invitation or a conveniently overlapping plan. Each time, Priya and Marcus simply held the line gently, without ever accusing Vivian of anything she could deny. 3 years later, Priya's family attends every major gathering, exactly as present, exactly as prioritized, as Marcus's side always was. Vivian still comes to dinners, still smiles warmly through them, still occasionally tests a boundary out of what Priya has come to understand is less malice than a genuine, controlling fear of ever not being the center of her son's family. Priya never got an apology. She never got Vivian to admit what 3 years of quiet exclusion had actually been. She simply stopped needing one. The photos on her own mantle now, in the home she shares with Marcus, are evenly split, her family, his family, together, exactly as it always should have been. Nobody ever had to lose for that to finally be true. Priya just had to notice, and then simply, steadily, stop letting anyone else write the guest list for her own life.